You've heard the familiar afterlife stories, a tunnel of light, a final judgment, a peaceful passing. But the ancient Gnostics whispered something far stranger. They said that after the last breath, the soul doesn't rise into heaven or fall into darkness. It enters a maze, a shifting realm of light and shadow, crafted by a false creator whose purpose is to keep you circling instead of remembering who you are. If life has ever felt like a loop, if you've sensed a quiet ache that you've been here before, this teaching speaks directly to that memory. In this video, we explore the Demiurge's hidden trap, why souls get lost, and the simple inner practices that help you stay awake. Take this as myth, symbol, or guidance, and trust only what truly resonates. Before we go further, a clear reminder. What you're about to hear comes from mystical tradition, not from science, law, or medical fact. These teachings are spiritual maps drawn from visions, dreams, and inner revelation. They're poetic, interpretive, and deeply personal. They may put words to something you've felt for a long time, but they aren't a replacement for your faith, your common sense, or the guidance of a trained professional. Honestly, when I first encountered material like this, it felt like someone was handing me a lantern for a dark hallway I'd been stumbling through. It helped illuminate parts of my story, and it also raised questions. That's okay. Use what resonates. Let go of what doesn't. If a teaching brings you peace or clarity, let it guide you. If it conflicts with medical advice, legal counsel, or the support of a mental health professional, follow that professional guidance first. You are responsible for your choices, your mental health, and your path. If anything here touches on trauma, intense grief, or major life decisions, pause and reach out to someone qualified to help. If you feel overwhelmed at any point, stop the video, breathe, and talk with a trusted friend or clinician. Think of these ideas as stories meant to open doors, not final answers etched in stone. I'll offer language, images, and invitations to reflect, not absolutes. Take what helps, adapt what matters, and leave what doesn't. Your well-being is more important than any teaching, so use your discernment and care for yourself first. Think about someone who builds a model city on a kitchen table, but insists the table is the entire world. That's the image the Gnostics use for the Demiurge, a self-assured architect convinced he is the ultimate creator, while actually confined to a single dim room. He's not the source of the pure light or the origin of love. He's a craftsman working with borrowed tools and tired ideas, blind to anything beyond his blueprints. You'll recognize him in small ways. The boss who takes credit for a team's work, the narrative that reduces complexity to one simple answer, the voice inside that demands obedience because it fears being wrong. In Gnostic texts, the Demiurge shapes matter, systems, and rules with confident strokes, then proclaims those structures sacred. The universe becomes his construction site, every law a brick he laid. But the brickwork is brittle because it's based on imitation rather than insight. Imagine walking into a hall of mirrors that gleams so brightly you assume it's the real sun. Every reflection seems true, every corridor convincing, until you try to find the exit. That's the maze the Demiurge creates, a copy of true creation, dazzling at first, but designed to trap. The light in those mirrors is a reflection of a reflection, lacking depth and warmth. The Gnostics saw this as tragic, not pure evil, so much as ignorance wrapped in arrogance. He wants worship because his identity depends on being the center. He fears the idea that there might be a greater source of light and love. How does that hit home? Think of times you've clung to a story about yourself because admitting a larger truth felt dangerous. The Demiurge is our mirror of misguided certainty. Understanding him isn't about demonizing. It's about recognizing the limits of structures we revere and asking whether what we worship is the original light or just a well-crafted shadow. Picture leaving your body and not instantly snapping back to some remembered home. In many Gnostic accounts, death opens a passage into a hidden maze, not of brick and mortar, but of memories, habits, and feelings that still cling to you. You rise, And layer after layer appears. Some look like corridors of thought, others like rooms full of faces you've known. At each threshold stand the archons, strange, imposing figures who act as gatekeepers. They don't all wear crowns and robes. Some arrive as stern judges demanding an accounting for your life. Some smile and offer comfort, pretending to be guides. Some whisper old fears or dangle the promise of a familiar identity. Imagine being tired, grief-heavy, and wanting nothing more than the person you loved, the job, the role that defined you. An archon asks one simple question, and in your fatigue you answer with that identity. That answer is a hook. It tethers you. Another offers terror. Relive your worst shame until you reach for escape. Each reaction, guilt, pride, fear, clinging to who you were, becomes a path that can lead you back down into embodiment, back into the same schoolroom of forgetting. This maze is merciless because it's subtle. It uses your own history against you. And yet the Gnostics say there's hope. The spark within you, the memory of the true self, can recognize these tricks. If, in those liminal moments, you release the grips of story and attachment, if you answer from that inner knowing instead of from old wounds, the gates lose their power. The maze still stands, but its traps become transparent. What looks like judgment looks like a test of whether you remember how to let go. What looks like a guide could be a last chance to choose differently. The journey after death, in this view, is less about punishment and more about whether you can finally remember who you really are. Think of the archons as the bureaucrats of a cosmic maze, not distant monsters but whispering clerks who run the systems around you. In day-to-day life, they don't roar, they murmur. They live in your inbox, in the habit loops that drag you through autopilot, in the voice that tells you you're not enough, in the social script that hands out roles. Those small, repetitive forces shape the psychic atmosphere you move through. Schedules that cage your attention, anxieties that steer your choices, appetites that demand constant feeding. That's their territory. When the body dies, the same figures show themselves as gatekeepers. The labyrinth tightens into doors, and guardians who demand accounts, who test attachments and confessions. It can feel terrifying, like a tribunal of shadows deciding where you belong. But the crucial thing is this: their authority is conditional. The archons gain reality because souls give it to them. If you meet their questions with panic, if you beg their favors or tremble before their verdicts, you're strengthening the lock. On the other hand, clarity and remembrance shift the balance. If you learn to recognize the archon's tactics, the shame that sounds like truth, the promise of safety that costs your freedom, you stop feeding them. Remembering a higher source, an inner spark that predates the maze, diffuses their power. This isn't abstract theology, it's practical psychology. When a thought arises that says, "You must be this," test it. When fear tightens, breathe and name it. Refuse the transaction. Don't trade your sense of self for approval or avoidance. So the maze is dangerous only to the sleeper. To someone awake, corridors stop being prisons and become passages. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to remember why you entered the labyrinth in the first place, to learn where you belong beyond the constructed cosmos. Hold that memory steady, and the archon's keys grow pale in your hand. So why does a luminous soul, something vast and wise, get lost in the first place? Gnostic thinkers point to a surprisingly simple root: identification. If across life you keep telling yourself the same story, "I am my job, I am my opinions, I am this body," then at the moment of passing, those labels don't fall away. They cling. You don't let go of the script, so the soul carries the role into whatever comes next. Imagine the world of transition as a maze, and your attachments as little doors. Archons, in these teachings, aren't monsters with pitchforks, so much as illusions that play on what you already believe. They'll stage a scene. You are shown a mistake, vivid and loud. If you identify with guilt, you believe you are that failure. They'll offer applause. a montage of your achievements. And if you've built your self-worth on praise, you won't resist returning to it. They'll show a loved one in tears. And if your sense of purpose is to fix and protect, you'll reach for the exit that leads back to attachment. Each reaction closes one way and opens several others. Every emotional pull is a new turn in the maze. It's easy to see this in everyday life. Think of a time you clung to a role, parent, partner, professional, so tightly that when it shifted, you felt unmoored. Now imagine carrying that tightness, the half-remembered grudges and victories, into death. Without a steady inner clarity, without some practice of recognizing, I am more than this feeling. The soul follows the strongest currents it remembers. Those currents are habit and emotion, not the quiet compass of inner knowing. So the mechanics of forgetting aren't magical. They're psychological and very human. The more you react, the more paths appear. The less you bring presence and discernment, the more likely you are to pick an old route. And then, in a new life, you wake up with lessons half remembered, drawn once again to complete what you mistook for yourself. Think about the last time something felt like an answer. Maybe it was a ritual that calmed your panic, a teacher who spoke the words you needed to hear, or a belief that suddenly made the world tidy and safe. That warm glow, like a tunnel of light or a benevolent figure waiting at the end, can feel like home. Mystics warn that those lights can be misleading. They're not always the doorway outward. Sometimes they're a soft ceiling that keeps you inside the same system that created the questions in the first place. These comfortable lights are clever. They don't have to shock you into awareness with terror. They can lull you into complacency. A promise that everything is finished or there's nothing more to remember soothes anxiety. And who wouldn't want that? But the danger is subtle. When relief becomes an endpoint, curiosity dies. The maze doesn't prefer your fear over your comfort. It only wants you occupied, safe, at rest, uninterested in asking the deeper questions. So learn to notice the signs. Does this experience encourage stopping or inviting more inquiry? Does it discourage doubt and close down conversation? Is it exclusive? This, and only this, is the truth. Or does it point towards something larger and stranger? Pay attention to how you feel afterward. Temporarily relieved or gradually numbed? If a meeting with the sacred feels like a tidy fix, hold that tenderness with care, but don't let it become a permanent answer. Ask gently but persistently, who is behind all this? Where is the source that existed before any form? Which presence feels like home, not just relief? These aren't meant to unsettle you for the sake of unease. They're the tools that keep the soul awake. In the next section, we'll look at practical ways to test experiences, how to stay grounded in curiosity without abandoning comfort entirely. One of the first clues that you've already been living inside a maze is how familiar the patterns feel. Even when everything on the surface looks new, you meet a new partner, a new job, a new city, and somehow the same arguments, the same ache, the same small betrayals show up again. It's like your life has its own echo chamber, different walls, same sound. You also notice a persistent sense that collecting more won't fix it. You buy the things you thought would soothe the ache. More success, more friends, more distractions. And for a while, it gleams. Then the shine dulls, and there's that same hollow feeling at the center. No matter how much you gather, something essential still seems missing, as if you were trying to fill a cup from the outside that can only be filled from within. Sometimes the sign is quieter. In the middle of laughter or grief, you feel a small, steady presence watching from behind your experiences. Not you, exactly, and not the world either. It's a quiet watcher in your chest that notices the show but doesn't fully belong to it. You can't easily explain it. It's simply there, a kind of background witness that raises the question, who is seeing all of this? Different languages try to describe these sensations. Psychology might name them as attachment patterns, conditioned responses, or the residue of old wounds. Meditation teachers might call the watcher awareness or presence. Through a Gnostic lens, these are more than metaphors. They're early memories of the soul. The soul remembers a fullness it once knew and recognizes that much of life's architecture distracts from that inner presence. The maze, in that reading, isn't just random confusion, but a subtle system designed to keep attention outward. If any of this rings true for you, the repeats, the emptiness, the inner witness, treat it as a kind of map. These are not failures. They're signposts pointing towards something deeper. They invite you to pause, to pay attention, and to ask what it would take to turn toward that quiet watcher instead of running the same route once more. Instead of trying to beat the maze by battering its walls, there's a quieter way out. Remember what's real. If the passages are mainly illusions, projections of fear, roles, and authority, then force only deepens the confusion. What Gnostic teachers kept pointing to isn't another doctrine, but an experience, an invisible source beyond form, beyond gender, beyond every mask of power. They named it the fullness, the living light, the one. Call it what helps you come home. This isn't abstract. Think of a moment when something inside you simply knew the right thing to do. Not because someone told you, but because everything inside went still and clear. That knowing is the same vibration. When you tune to that presence through honesty, inner stillness, and a love that isn't trying to control or protect out of fear, your whole frequency shifts. You stop reacting to every flashy signpost the maze throws up. Practically, that looks like small, steady practices. Telling the truth to yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. Carving out 5 minutes of silence to notice what's actually present. Choosing responses out of care, rather than from a dread of being wrong or alone. It also means checking motives. Are you seeking approval, or are you seeking alignment with what's real? The more you practice remembering the source while you're alive, the less likely false lights, seductive ideas, hollow authorities, fearful identities will mislead you later. Imagine walking through dense fog. The walls look close, shapes shift, but you carry a clear inner sun. You don't need to demolish the fog. You move through it, confident that only the sun is solid. A soul filled with remembrance moves the same way. Unhurried, anchored, eyes on what's true. That is the only real exit. Not a course, not a fight, but a slow, habitual turning back toward the living light within. You don't need secret rituals to begin preparing your consciousness. Start with 3 simple, repeatable practices that fit into a life already full of errands, emails, and family. First, carve out small daily moments of quiet, even 5 minutes, where you rest as awareness itself. Sit, breathe, and watch thoughts and emotions pass without grabbing them. Think of it like exercising an inner muscle. The more you notice without clinging, the more your soul recognizes itself apart from the running commentary. I often do this while waiting for my coffee to brew. Those tiny pauses become brief sanctuaries that slowly reshape how I move through the day. Second, practice sincere self-examination. Gently notice which fears and desires steer your decisions, the ones that whisper and the ones that shout. Ask yourself honestly, if I were a soul moving through worlds, would this still have power over me? Say it without blame. You'll uncover small attachments and patterns you can loosen, and that clarity changes how you choose, one ordinary decision at a time. Third, commit to acts of truth and compassion, especially when no one is watching. Speak honestly, keep small promises, offer kindness without reward. Each quiet, sincere act tunes you toward a higher light and aligns your behavior with what really matters. These habits won't hand you a map of the afterlife, but they refine your inner compass. And in any unknown realm, a steady compass matters far more than a detailed itinerary. This is not performance. It's tending the ground from which an authentic life grows. Now close your eyes and imagine you have just stepped out of your body. You stand in a vast, dim corridor where edges are softened like memory. Far ahead are doors, some rimmed with gentle light, some wrapped in shadow. Voices drift from them. One replays old scenes, looping guilt and what-ifs. Another flatters, praising your importance until you feel hooked. A third murmurs comfort, promising rest if you simply follow. Instead of moving, place your hand over your heart in your imagination. Breathe and whisper inwardly, "I am more than memory. I am more than fear. I seek the source beyond form." Feel those phrases as a steady compass. Notice which doors dim when you speak, and which presence remains quietly bright, without pressure or manipulation. This is not an exercise to predict the afterlife. It's a practice in choosing from a deeper place than reflex, shame, or fear. When you return, carry that calm awareness into your day, holding the light that stayed, not the voices that tried to pull you. Let yourself notice if a door pulls harder some days. That's normal. Over time, this exercise sharpens your sense of inner orientation, so choices arise from clarity instead of old hooks. You can practice for just a minute when anxiety or doubt shows up, and each time you come back to that quiet brightness, it grows easier to follow it in life. Return anytime. The corridor and its doors will be here when you are ready. B. If the maze shows up in your thinking, it changes how you choose to live, not overnight, but in steady, practical ways. Instead of defining yourself by a job title, a relationship status, or the checklist everyone else seems to follow, you begin to prioritize the part of you that feels steady, no matter what changes on the outside. I know that sounds abstract, so here's what it might look like in real life. When a boss calls you essential one week and expendable the next, you don't collapse into panic because your sense of worth isn't tied to that badge. When a friendship cools, you grieve, you learn, and you don't build a shrine of resentment. Forgiveness becomes a tool, not to excuse harm, but to unshackle yourself from carrying what will weigh you down in the next corridor. I've had to practice this. Letting go of petty grievances meant showing up with clearer energy for the people and projects that actually matter. You also stop being dazzled by systems that ask for blind obedience. Schools, corporations, politics, they all have corridors designed to keep you moving in a narrow direction. Knowing there's a maze underneath makes you more skeptical and more loyal to that quiet inner truth that nudges you to ask, does this feel honest? Does this serve real life? That loyalty looks like small acts, speaking up when something's off, choosing work that aligns with your values, or simply saying no when a role would require you to betray yourself. And the way you treat others shifts. Instead of trying to fix or control people, you begin to see them as fellow travelers who will face their own choices. You offer clarity when it's helpful, kindness without strings, and example without preaching. You listen more than you judge. You model courage by living honestly, which often teaches more than any argument. When life becomes a training ground for freedom, everyday decisions stop feeling meaningless. Each choice is practice, for standing firm, for letting go, for seeing people whole. That's how you start carving a life that prepares you for whatever lies beyond the maze, not just another repetition inside it. The hidden maze of the Demiurge can feel frightening at first. Corridors that fold back on themselves, voices that pretend to know you. But remember, in every Gnostic story, illusion only survives where truth is forgotten. The maze is clever, not ultimate. It may twist your path, confuse your steps, even make memories look unfamiliar, but it cannot extinguish the spark Sophia and the higher source planted inside you. That tiny stubborn light is older than any archon, older than worlds and death. You don't have to memorize every corridor. Learn your light. Practice recognizing it in small things: steady compassion, quiet curiosity, sudden clarity. And those signs become a map. Whether you read these teachings literally, symbolically, or somewhere between, the invitation is the same. Live awake, ask gentle questions, and let remembrance grow stronger than fear. When fear rises, look for the spark. It's always there, ready to guide you home. If this vision stirred you, you're not alone. Share dreams, near-death moments, or inner encounters below. Your story might steady someone who's never spoken. Subscribe to explore Gnostic ideas about soul, the Demiurge, and the path of remembrance. Remember, your light is older than any labyrinth. Walk consciously, not fearfully, through all worlds, eyes open,